In this Sport Feels Life podcast, we bring back a returning guest, Allistair McCaw. That's right, he was such an awesome guest that we had to bring him back.
Allistair is a best-selling author and speaker who is an expert on leadership, team culture, and performance. You won't want to miss out on what he has to share in today's episode.
That's right. So he was born in Ireland and raised in South Africa. He is the youngest of four boys and has a background as an athlete playing tennis. There was a point in time when he first had a natural desire to become a champion. He started making a vision board to guide him towards reaching his goals. He even stuck his face on Rocky for some inspiration in his early childhood.
He later found success on the world stage in the duathlon as a five-time world championship competitor. His experience as an athlete became more about the journey, not the destination.
True. And Alistair has also recently published a new book. If you'd like to check it out, it's called Mindset is Your Superpower.
Listen to our podcast and hear what it's all about.
All right.
Welcome to on Sport Feels Life today. For the podcast, we have Allistair McCaw. We're excited to have him back as a returning guest. It's been since the start of Sport Feels Life podcast in COVID year 2020 for us. So welcome back, Allistair, and thanks for joining us again.
Thanks for having me back. It's nice to be back.
Yeah, and so for any listeners who may not have heard our first episode with you, I just want to give a brief introduction. You are a best-selling author and speaker, and you are well known for speaking on topics such as leadership, mindset, team culture. And so I'd like to just maybe if you could share a little backstory on your path as to how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, sure. So let's see. I was born in Belfast, Northern Ireland. We moved to South Africa when I was 6 years old. So if you're wondering where the accent, where you're trying to place the accent, that's pretty much my background is Irish South African. I was brought up in a family of four boys, and it was a very sporty family right from the start. There was always world championships and world cups going on in the backyard, in all sports, rugby, cricket, soccer, tennis, you name it. So being the youngest of the four boys, I had to grow up very, very quickly. I was, there'd be those backyard brawls and so on and so forth. So it toughened me up a little bit quicker having three older brothers. So my first love was tennis, when I was probably about 8, and already at that age I wanted to be a champion. I didn't know where that came from, but I had this image from a very young age, and this is one of the reasons why I wrote my second book, Champion Minded, was just having a vision at a very, very young age of what I wanted to be. Had already started there, and I remember sticking pictures on my wall and things like that. Like I had a picture of Rocky, the boxer, and then I cut back in the day, we would have photos printed. They weren't just on your phone. And I'd cut out my face, my head, and place that on top of Rocky's and already see myself as a champion. So I got to a very good level in tennis as a junior, placed in the top 10 in the under 14s in South Africa. And then it just became too expensive. The financial burden was too much. And on our family, tennis becomes a very expensive sport. Like any other sport comes when you get better, you need better coaches, you need better facilities, you need to travel more, and it starts to become expensive, as any parent would know who has a kid that's in a sport or activity. So I decided at 14 to take up another sport that wouldn't cost me any money, and that was running. And I had a bit of good pedigree from my mom, who was an Olympic trialist in the 400 meters. So she trained under Mary Peters in Belfast, who's a very well-known coach from British athletics. So I had that pedigree. I had those genes, if I can say. And at 16, I became the South African 5-kilometer road champion. I ran, I think, it was a 14:55 at that age already, and it wasn't a flat course either. So and I still had that dream of and that vision of an 8-year-old of being a champion. It didn't really matter what sport it was in. I just wanted to be at the top of a podium and be a world champion. From there, I progressed to triathlon and duathlon, and went on to compete in 5 world championships. And My dream of being a world champion was cut short by one place, where I finished second in my age group in the world championships. So that was the peak of my career. And what did that teach me? It taught me that the journey was more important than the destination, because you're going to spend a lot more time in the journey than the 1 minute standing on the podium. And, later on in my life, of having worked with a lot of professional athletes, and having asked one of the athletes that I worked with who won a Grand Slam, the French Open, I asked her, what was it like what was the feeling of that you'd eventually reached your goal? And she said, I woke up the next day and it was almost like nothing. It was an amazing feeling the day before, but it's almost like you're just back to normal the next day. So it was very, very strange. So you've got to enjoy the journey. So cut a long story short, I had a decent athletic career, got to travel the world, which was amazing. Got into working with athletes from a physical perspective as a performance coach. Got to tour the professional tennis tour and PGA and a lot of great sports events around the world. And then in my late 30s, I transitioned over to more leadership and team culture, where I'm super passionate about, and that's what I do today.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that background. I think it's really interesting that you wanted to be a champion at 8 years old, and you don't exactly know where it came from. You just know that you wanted to be a world champion. And I love how you also started making a vision board before vision boards were really even a thing, cutting your face out and sticking it on Rocky. But clearly that has helped lead you to the success that you have found today. So you deal with a lot of athletes, and you've met a lot of people along the way. How common is it just for you to find people that have that natural instinct to just want to be a winner or a champion per se?
Yeah. The thing is, getting back to, I don't know where that came from. I mean, my parents never pushed me. They never really came to any of my sports events very much. And of course they loved me, but they were both working very, very hard to put, food on the table for 4 boys, and being immigrants to South Africa as well. So, I had to really grow a lot of responsibility and accountability at a very young age. I think where I'm going to on this is that it has to come from yourself. I believe that to be a great athlete, you need 3 qualities. The first one is you need a hunger, which can be another word for passion. You need to really have a hunger to succeed, or a passion for it, because if you don't love what you're doing, you're not going to sustain the discipline and the motivation needed to go the longer route. The second thing is the self-discipline that you need. Nobody can give you discipline. You can't buy discipline. Doesn't matter how much money you have in the bank. Discipline is something that you have to make a decision and choose on. And then the third one is the mindset to handle adversity, failure, pressure, all these things. I believe that every champion needs those 3 qualities to really be at the top of their game. And that's not just in sport. I think that's in a lot of areas as well. Is you got to love what you do. You've got to have self-discipline, and you've also got to have the right mindset to deal with adversity and pressure. Because when you're aiming for a very high level, or aiming for excellence, there's going to be setbacks, there's going to be difficulty, there's going to be days you don't feel motivated, and that's where those three things come in.
Yeah, those 3 things are huge. We're both track and field athletes, as some of our listeners know, and coach along the way. And finding athletes with those hunger and the motivation and the drive at a younger age is very easy. And then as athletes get a little bit older, they taste a little success. Then they sometimes spring an injury or see a little failure. Then they start to learn that it's just not all easy going. Let me just kind of get better and better and better, and everything's going to go my way. So that's where that discipline and that mindset against adversity and failure truly does set people apart. And you've been around people that have been setting themselves apart from others in competition for years now, and gotten to write many, many, many books, starting with Mindset of a Champion, or is it Champion Minded?
The first book was 7 Keys to Being a Great Coach, and then the next book was Champion
Ah,
Minded. Yeah.
okay. 7 keys to being a great coach. So helping people teach others how to become successful, and then champion minded. What is, I guess, the motivation to start writing down your thoughts to share with others? How did that spurn for you?
I think with the first book, Scott, it was more just sharing my career. I knew when I wrote the book was 2016, and that was pretty much more or less when my coaching career came to an end in terms of working one-on-one with athletes or working with teams, for example. So I really just wanted to summarize what I'd learned, what I've experienced, into that book, because that was the time I was starting to transition more into leadership and mindset and team culture, for example. But I wanted to really just document in that first book my experiences as a coach, and I got to work alongside some incredible coaches, very well-known coaches, and got to share meals with them and bus rides and hotel and so on and so forth. So it was just really incredible to experience that. And then Champion Minded, as I just mentioned in the introduction, was really about maximizing your skills and your abilities, and not relying so much on talent, but relying on the things that require zero talent, if you want to call it that. Things like your attitude, your effort, your discipline, all these things that don't require talent. That was the sole, one of the main purposes for Champion Minded was, you don't need to be the most talented. If you're willing to work the hardest and bring a great attitude every day, it will take you very, very far, regardless what field you choose.
No, that's wonderful. Yeah, it speaks volumes, and you hear these parallel roads in athletes and coaches who find success, and I think we say it all the time in the pole vault. It's like, it doesn't matter who you hear it from, as long as you hear it from someone and it clicks in your brain. That's all we're looking for. So those are great notes, and sharing those experiences along the way, learning from all the coaches you've met. That's probably one of the best. My favorite things about athletics and travel with athletics is finding people to share stories and learn from along the way. So writing it down is maybe something that I need to start doing myself.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, definitely documenting things. I've always kept a notebook. I still do today. So if I have ideas, I write them down. Of course, if I'm away, I'll make a note on my phone, but I'll always actually write it down physically in a notebook. All my books have involved just taking down notes and in a notebook over years, that I still go back to. I mean, I have a full box of just notebooks, that I just take down notes. So yeah, it's really a great habit to create.
Yeah, and I'm sure writing down everything, it really helps you reflect on everything that you've learned and seen along the way. And it almost brings me back to what you said earlier, as far as enjoying the journey, just because once you've arrived somewhere, it's just maybe not as everything that you imagined. But as you're writing all the books, or as you are doing all the training for your sport, or putting in the work for your job, it's all to get to this end goal. And I think what makes it sweeter along the way is just knowing that there's that bit of hope on the other side. And so I think that keeps a little bit of positivity and excitement going along the way. And so transitioning a little bit, you focus a little bit more on leadership and team culture now, you said. So what are some similarities that one could take, say they learn how to develop as an individual? What role does that play in the success of a team? I know it's tricky with team dynamics to get everyone on the same page. Maybe there's some different personalities, but ultimately, I guess, how do you see raising the level of one individual or multiple individuals, and to what effect does that help the team reach their goal?
Yeah. So, having worked with different organizations and colleges as well in the United States as well, where I help coaches recruit certain athletes, there's three things that we always look for, and that's, the first one is character. The second one is the competence, that they've obviously got to have the skills. Skills are your entry ticket. And then the third thing is coachability. So those are the three key C's I always like to share with any organization, or any coach or any leader or any manager for that part. Is those are the three key C's: is the right character, having competence. Now, you don't have to be competent in everything, but the third one is massive, is coachability. And I'd really say that coachability is linked to character as well. Character, if there's too much ego around, or you don't have the right attitude, you're not going to be coachable. You're not going to be teachable. And I'm sure you guys, Megan and Scott, you guys know as well that you've seen athletes growing up where they were maybe incredibly talented, but they weren't coachable, or very, coachable enough. Let's put it that way. Or they let other distractions get in the way of their path as well. We've seen those type of people fall away. But what makes a great team is a great team of individuals. First of all, is that each individual is accountable. It's incredibly hard as well, and because there's so many diversities and people coming from different backgrounds and values and beliefs and so on and so forth, now to melt those together. But what I've noticed in great teams is you don't necessarily have to worry about the athletes or the team members who get along. It's more the ones that maybe aren't friends or don't get along. That's the key area where you have to take care of as a leader or a coach, to the best. The easier players, the ones who get along with each other, that takes care of itself. But the ones who are maybe maybe not as outgoing, friendly, etc., those are the ones that you've really got to give more time to and manage more better. That's what I've seen in the teams, and the great leaders and the great coaches are able to do that. A lot of the times I've worked with athletes, college athletes here in the United States, and I always love to hear their side as well. And they love to have one-on-one meetings with you as well, which is that's something very incredible about this generation, is they do enjoy to have one-on-one meetings. And they'll say, I'll ask them, what's your biggest challenge in the team right now? And they'll just say it's maybe an individual who's not a bad person, but they don't like to come out with the group. They don't like to get involved with things, and we struggle with that. So it's those ones who are maybe a little bit more individualistic and maybe don't enjoy the social part that much. Those are the challenging ones.
Yeah. As you say that, I'm thinking from the experience of having been on a team as an athlete, having coached a team, and then also been a manager of an organization. And so it is funny what you said about what you need to worry about really is those people who are maybe not on board. They're not bringing the right positive attitude, because that really can just come in and spread negativity throughout the team. And it creates this culture that's maybe not the most beneficial. So how would you, as a coach or someone in charge, how would you suggest maybe getting rid of that issue? I mean, what comes to mind for me is accountability, but you want to make it seem like that is not the norm for your team or group.
Yeah, I mean, look, everybody brings a different personality. We have introverts, we have extroverts, we have so many different personalities within a team. So we first of all need to understand that where they're coming from as well. And we need to explain that to the other team members as well. As not everybody thinks like you, not everybody believes what you believe, or not everybody has your values, for example. So I think it's important to explain to the ones that are maybe not as, and this doesn't make them bad people, not as social, or want to be at every team event, or do things with other teammates out of practice time or out of match time, is explain to them that it is important to make an effort sometimes, and to feel part of the team, and also to make them feel that that their teammates really do want them to be part of more things. I think that's important to address. We can't change people's personalities. We can't necessarily change that they're introverted and make them extrovert. I believe that's something that kind of born with in a way. So I think that's important, just to understand where every individual comes from, first of all. And of course, to explain why it is important to make an effort on certain things, that you don't have to be at every single activity outside of the practice time, but it is important to make an effort.
Just one more question along this line, I guess. What about coaching staffs? You know, because athletic departments or teams per se are all a reflection of their leaders themselves. And so when you're trying to recruit athletes, or you're trying to build a team, whether it's a high school coach who's got an assistant coach that believes differently, and they're trying to build a team of success for their high school or club coach that oversteps the high school coach, or a college group of coaches, how do you encourage communication amongst maybe staff to make sure that they're all aligned to help transfer the right messages down to their team to become champions?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there, Scott. Communication. That's the big one. And talking about the C's, I've got another 3 C's where great teams work together with, and that is with number 1, connection. Is connection and building relationships is important. That's the first thing. You as a leader are going to have difficult conversations or have confrontations, but the better relationship you have with somebody else, the easier it is to manage those, and the easier those conversations or moments are had, because it's coming from a good place, and the person. So connection is important. The second one is collaboration, and collaboration is a massive one in terms of working together and working in diverse cultures, values, beliefs, etc., is that we all understand that we all don't think alike. We all haven't been brought up with the same values. I think that's very important to explain to a team. And then the third one is communication, as you mentioned, Scott, is that we've got to respect how we communicate. You've also got to communicate how you're going to communicate. So with regards emails or meetings and so on and so forth, what's a respectful time to reply to these things, etc. Then instead of what creates irritation is emails or messages that are opened and not answered, or just left, for example, and you don't know what's going on. So I think all these things are important to discuss beforehand. The expectations are important to put out there, but definitely, your second set of 3 C's is the connection, the relationships you have with each other. Now, here's the thing, is you might not get along with everybody. You might not like everybody. That's fine. It's impossible in a great team that everybody is best friends. It's absolutely impossible. However, we can be friendly and we can be respectful, even if you don't necessarily like another person. And I like to describe it really as, the 3, if you were to look at an archery target. So you have the middle bullseye, which is red, right? And I like to describe those as your closest people that you enjoy being around all the time. You trust them, you love them. And there's a very small, maybe, number. Your second ring, which I think is blue on an archery target, is your friends. You're friends with them. You enjoy their company as well. But the third ring is the black ring on the archery target. And those are people that you might not necessarily connect as much with. You don't necessarily like as much. It's not that you don't like them, but you can still be friendly with them and respectful. And that's how I describe a great team as well, is those 3 rings. There's ones that you're really going to love and trust. There's ones that you're going to like. And there's ones that you're not necessarily going to like, but we can learn how to be friendly and respectful within those three rings, for example. So in the best teams I've worked with, and I've just come back from Europe, where I've been with massive soccer teams like Paris Saint-Germain and teams in England, where that is the key area we focus on, is to have a great team, not everybody has to be best friends. That's impossible, but we can get along and we can understand our differences from each other.
No, that's so well spoken, and hopefully brings a lot of attention both to coaches who may have staff issues, or to coaches who are trying to develop the team culture that they want, as you've mentioned, you know, big teams, professional teams, lots of money going to those teams, lots of ego, lots of me, but I also want to be good, but I want my team to do well. And you know, putting everybody underneath that common goal makes a difference, and then respecting their differences. And I think especially for coaches of younger teams, when athletes and parents want to step in and say, my kid's supposed to be this, or my kid's the star, that don't put them on the bench, or they got to play defense or offense or whatever it is, finding a role for each individual athlete, but then having respect on that communication, the connection, the collaboration with that is something that everybody can value from. So thanks for laying that out there so well, for all that.
Scott, it's not just with big teams and organizations. These problems are right down to grassroots level, to recreational level in teams. There's ego, there's different opinion, there's ones that are more friendly with some than others. So this is a human trait, not just a level trait in terms of skill. These issues are everywhere, from elementary school to the highest level in college or professional sports. These things occur. I think what the best coaches and the best leaders do is they set the expectations early. So this is how we expect to collaborate. This is how we expect to communicate. This is how we expect to deal with adversity or challenges. So the expectations are set early. And that's an important aspect. So there's no surprises along the way, or miscommunications or misunderstandings. I worked with one particular coach who is incredibly successful with his team. And I like to ask leaders and coaches, what's one of the first things you do with a team, besides setting the culture? And, he said to me, it's laying down the expectations of, before you join our team, before you sign on the dotted line, this is how we run things here. You might not be a starter on the field or on the court. You might be on the bench for half the games, etc. So there's clear expectations from day one. People get let down, not just in organizations and teams, but even in relationships where expectations haven't been met. And I think that's a key area, is that the best leaders and coaches and managers, they lay down the expectations early. They give the worst possible scenario, so there's no surprise along the way of, hey, I thought I'd be starting every game. I thought I was going to be the star shooter here. No, and that's what he did. And what resulted in that was a happy team, because they trusted him. He from the get-go, he said how it was going to be, so there was no false expectations. He had a happy bench, probably one of the happiest benches I'd seen, in terms of, even if they came on for the last 5 minutes of the game, they'd give 100% for those 5 minutes. They believed they were going to be game changers coming on with 5 minutes to go, and that's the key.
You raise a really good point with setting the expectations early. I think that probably is the biggest problem with a lot of groups or teams, is that maybe the groundwork isn't laid up front. And that's where I can see that issue maybe coming into play with recruiting, and coaches are just trying to lure in the best athletes with all of these promises, but then someone might get there and be unhappy. And that's where it really does pay off to maybe lean on the side of under promising and over delivering. But I think it can also be difficult to change a team culture or a group dynamic once it's been established for so long. And so that's where having maybe a third party like yourself going to visit these different teams, or prompting a conversation, because it's tricky to bring these things up out of the blue just when everything has been going as is, and all of a sudden someone brings something up and it's a problem. So how would you suggest, maybe within a team or a group, if someone feels like maybe it isn't as efficient or as strong as of a team culture as it could be, how would someone even go about bringing up that issue, whether they are the leader or maybe they're just someone not in charge?
Yeah. Again, getting back to that word of communication, great leaders, great coaches are able to have a culture that doesn't create fear of speaking up, creating a safe place. There needs to be psychological safety as well within the environment. So, I always suggest and recommend to coaches, managers, leaders that they make time each week for one-on-one meetings. Now, I get it. It's impossible if you have 25 players on the roster or 25 people in your office where now you're going to have 25 one-on-one meetings per week. It's impossible. But you leave the door open in terms of, I'll give you an example. Like, hey, on a Wednesday between 2 and 3:30, and on a Friday between 2 and 3:30, I'm open to anybody that wants to talk, share anything. Those 2 times per week, I'm leaving open. I'll leave a timesheet out where you can book 20 minutes with me if you need to. So you leave that opportunity open, that you're not having those conversations quickly after practice or on the way to the locker room where it's rushed and it's not comfortable. So I think, Megan, to be available is important as a leader, but to also create an environment where it's safe to speak up. Maybe you don't want to speak up in front of others, but like I said, you have those one-on-one meetings scheduled each week where you're not forcing anybody to come into your office to talk or speak. And also what's important as a leader, there needs to be rules with that as well, as that you're not being judgmental or bringing up other things that are not. It's that time is the athlete's time to speak and for you to listen. You don't have to come up with a solution during that meeting. It's just an area for that athlete or that employee to speak up and be heard. That's already half the solution right there. So, like I said, there needs to be rules for the leader, the coach.
Yeah. And how often do you see within teams or organizations that maybe there's a lot of conflict that hasn't been resolved for a long period of time? So there's a lot of built up resentment or feelings. So I guess, is that something that you see quite often?
Yeah, a lot of the times. So it's funny. I have this. There's a pattern of who uses my services. It's either cultures that are doing incredibly well, where it's more just a reaffirmation of we're doing things right, or it's basically I've walked into certain cultures, teams where it's like the coach is basically one day away from being fired. So it's like a desperation like point, and that's happened where I've been to some organizations where 3 days later the coach was fired. But the damage was done. It was just far too late to change things. Trust, there's no longer trust within the team. Once you lose trust, that's the massive one right there. And going back to what we spoke about, expectations. If you've laid expectations and now there's false expectations and you're not living up to your word, you're going to lose trust quickly. And Megan and Scott, some things are really irreparable in a way where you're just never going to gain that trust back again within that team. Something has to change. Yeah, a lot of the times it has been that coach or that person in that leadership position that's had to leave. So yeah, it's very, very difficult to turn around trust.
No, that's a great note. And trust is something that needs to be there, just as you mentioned, between all relationships, coaches, athletes, staff, in between anybody involved. And because the focus then, if there's no trust, is shifted away from performance. And it's shifted away from how do I get better and how do I go back to your 3 C's of character, confidence, coachability, to focus on what I can do on a daily basis to work on my sport. And shifting gears real quickly, moving towards your most recent book, right? That mindset is your superpower, right? This is clearly something where mindset would be a superpower in a negative way, or it's keeping the focus or a distraction from allowing the mindset to be a superpower is a better way to say. So this was a great discussion. I've really enjoyed the team culture side of it. I love working with teams and groups of people. But let's shift gears to the mindset is your superpower, and how can we encourage our listeners to really, one, believe in themselves, and two, learn how to work with their own mind to towards their benefit.
Yeah. So I always like to say that every day you wake up, you get to choose your attitude. So regardless of your circumstances, regardless of how bad the day was before, you wake up to a new day and you get to choose your attitude. Now, easier said than done when things aren't going great in your life, be it in a relationship, financially, an illness, etc., to wake up with a happy attitude. However, we can choose how we're going to live our day. I always like to say that the most important conversation you're going to have with yourself is the one you have in the mirror in the morning. And this might sound cheesy, but on my mirror, for example, I have stick-it notes with things like smile and today's going to be a great day. And like I said, these like little one-liners, and it might sound cheesy, but I'm like anybody else. I might write books on motivation and positivity, but I'm like anybody else where I can wake up not energized, motivated, feeling like taking on the world. I'm no different to anybody else. Do I get negative? Yes. So I need to remind myself of these things. So those are cues, for example. So the conversation I have in the mirror each morning is it's a new day. It's a new start. It's going to be a good day. I'm excited about speaking to Scott and Megan today on the podcast. I have all these things to look forward to. And that's really how I start my day. And I believe that when you get off to a good start, it's like a race. You guys know if you get a good push off on in pole vault, your first strides are incredibly important with regards rhythm and timing and building up speed, for example. It's the same with your attitude. Hey, I've actually got to give myself a pat on the back for that analogy there, guys.
It's really good, actually. I feel like you're a pole vault coach talking to us.
I know next to nothing about pole vaulting, but it really is. It's your start and it's building momentum for the day. And it's like you said, it's building momentum on the runway for the perfect jump. And that's how I see that.
I definitely agree with what you said about leaving those reminders up, because we can hear something, we can read something, but we forget a lot of times when we get stuck in the moment. And so I wore a bracelet all competition season that said believe. So anytime I picked up my pole, I could see it and just know, okay, I believe that this is the right pole, right run, right grip. I believe I can make the bar, whatever it was. It's something, it was just a very good cue and mental reminder for me. And then something else you said. So
can I ask you, would you write things on the bar? Like, I'm sure some athletes would put like something on the bar to like what they look at before their jump.
Oh, like their pole.
Yeah.
People might. I know some people put it on their hand is
their hand.
Or their shoe. I know some people like have something written on their shoe. But yeah, I haven't seen pole, but I like the hand, because the wrist, when you pick up the pole, you see it right there. But with starting your day and setting that tone for the day, I think sometimes when you have a lot on the schedule for the day, it's very easy to just rush and quickly go through the day. Do you have any routines or, I guess, daily habits that you have that, I guess, benefit the start of your day, that kind of set the tone for something positive? Or do you just kind of get right to business?
Yeah. So first of all, and I wrote about this in the book, it's called the 99 Habit Rule. I wanted to start my day with gratitude. And I know that sounds very cliche, like, oh, I'd love to start my day with gratitude, but I was really serious about it. So what I did is I wrote the word gratitude on a stick-it note. As you can imagine, there's a lot of stick-it notes around my house. And I stuck it on my bedside lamp. And every morning I'd wake up, I'd see the word gratitude. And I would think of two things I'm grateful for. Can be absolutely anything. So the very first thing I did, opening my eyes, was not checking my phone, was not seeing what the weather looked like outside. it was gratitude. What are 2 things I'm grateful for today? Could be anything. Had a good night's sleep. I'm thankful for this roof above my head. I'm thankful that I get to speak to you guys today, whatever it could be. And I did that consecutively for 90 days until it became a habit that I didn't need that stick-it note anymore. And I still do that to this day. So the first thing I do when I wake up is naturally think of gratitude, which is a great way to start. So I was able to ingrain that habit. I have my morning routine. I get up usually between 5:30 and 6. I'll put on the coffee. I'll take my little dog Emma out for a walk in the morning, which is actually the start of my morning routine in terms of mentally preparing. It's just a nice way to start. It's calm. There's nobody out yet. Sometimes it's still dark, depending on what season it is. I get back, have my coffee. I'll scroll through Twitter and Instagram, and that's where I'll put my first message on post on Instagram. Anybody who follows me on Instagram will know that I consistently do it on a daily basis in the morning and the afternoon. So that's part of my morning routine. And then I've got to a stage in my life as well where I'm working a bit less and taking more, enjoying life a little bit more. So in the morning, I'll go to the gym, I'll go for a run, or I'll play pickleball, which I love now as well in the morning. Yeah, massive pickleball fan. And that's my morning. I only start work around 1 o'clock after I've had lunch, and I don't even call it work because writing for me is something I love to do and I want to do. So I'm incredibly fortunate in that respect. But trust me, I had to really work hard the first 25, 30 years of my life to get to this position.
I can imagine that. They say, what if you pick something you love to do, you never work a day in your life.
Yeah. Yeah, they say that, follow your passion and so on, and it's half true, but I say I have this theory that if you enjoy what you do 80% of the time, so if you enjoy the work that you do, the job that you have 80% of the time, you're in the right place. You're doing the right thing. It's impossible to love and be passionate about absolutely everything. Am I passionate about doing my taxes? Am I passionate about doing admin? No, but it's part of my job. It's part of it. But if you love what you do 80% of the time and you're in a job or an environment or a sport or something, you're in a good place, because you're not going to get 100% where you just love everything about it.
Yeah. I think that's a good rule of thumb. I'm going to remember that. 100%.
Great. That's a great rule of thumb there. So one little
relationships as well, by the way. If you that's lovely. That's lovely to see. Really, if you love that person 80% of the time, you're in a good relationship. because it's impossible. It's impossible all the time. Trust me.
But I'm perfect.
Yeah.
No, that's a wonderful reminder, because we all may love our jobs or love our team or our sport, and something we didn't even get to dive into a ton is athletes who do reach the top of their sport and then they fall down a little bit, or they want to stay and they do for a little while, then they fall, then they go back up and they fall again. So that's something that I'm sure our readers can learn in the mindset as a superpower, staying disciplined, staying consistent, but finding the passion that you love and why the reasons that you love the sport that you're doing and the purpose behind going for it. That's something that we hope to learn more about in your book and learn more about from listening to your podcast as well. And what's the name of your podcast for our listeners?
It's my name, Allistair McCaw Podcast, but I haven't done many episodes in the last year or two. I've been really, really bad on that side. So yeah, I need to be better there. But just getting back, Scott, what you were saying there, the book as well is definitely aimed at understanding that not every day is going to be great, but there's something great to be found in every day as well. Motivation is fleeting, but discipline is a choice, is a decision. So it's impossible, like I said, to feel great every single day. It's impossible to be at your best every single day. I think that's important to remember. Understand that progress is not a straight line up. It's a roller coaster. It's a roller coaster that's going upwards. But you know, how you handle those dips or determine how quickly you climb.
Well, and for any listeners who might want to follow you, I follow you on Instagram and Twitter, but I realize I haven't logged on to Twitter for a while. I really do enjoy following you. It's a lot of great positive notes that you can just keeping up with. So for our listeners, where can they follow you on Instagram or Twitter?
Yeah, those are two of the best spots. So Instagram is at @BeChampionMinded, and Twitter is my name, at Allistair McCaw. I would say Twitter, my target focus there is more leadership, culture, business, as where the Instagram is really more motivation, mindset, champion mentality, etc. So, you know, I enjoy them both. It's I actually have to hold myself back from posting too much because I really enjoy it. I really enjoy adding value and sharing. So for me, it's never like, you know, some people say to me, how do you like stay motivated to keep that? And I said, I actually have to keep myself back from posting too much. So I love it. I really do. It's something I look forward to in the morning is making my first post.
Well, I can imagine you have so much content when you've written so many books and all you have to do is just make one post out of it. So you have posts for the rest of the days for your life, I'm sure. Just stored in
Yeah,
there.
you know, funny if you know, Megan, funny you should mention that, is that I almost use Instagram as a gauge of what works, what doesn't work. So let's say a post, you know, I might post something where I think this is great and it gets 10 likes and like I'm shocked. And then I put something out there and within 3 hours it has 7,500 likes. And we're like, wow, that worked.
That's
That will be something I'll use in a book.
wow.
It's
That is,
almost like a little bit of an experimental playing ground in a way of like, that worked, that didn't work, that I'm going to use for my next book, that's not going to work. So it's also definitely an experimental playground for me as well.
Making more useful tools out of social media and just your daily life. That's another positive step. No, we're taking notes, and yeah, this has been a lovely time talking with you today on Sport Fuels Life. And your history has been in sports, and you've developed a way to communicate both the hardships and your knowledge of how to become a champion, how to develop team culture, how to develop success within interpersonal relationships on athletics teams. And Allistair, we thank you so much for joining us today. What would be I like to, I don't know why it just popped into my head, but what's something that you've learned in your travels and experiences that stands out, that made you laugh, something you weren't expecting, that gives you a bit of laughter, that was just kind of a shock and an awe experience from a team?
Oh gosh, I think you've got me there.
Scott always likes to ask these really random questions.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I'm gonna have to. Oh gosh, how much time do we have to think about it? So something that's happened that's funny. I think. Oh gosh, I mean, I'm just gonna give you one. It's where I love to have these things like the 3 C's and the 5 E's and so on and so forth. And you know, sometimes I get really enthusiastic about presenting it to a group, and then I'll forget it halfway through. I'm presenting it. I can't remember the third E, you know, it just happened recently, actually, in Scotland. I was speaking to students, and I was, you know, talking about the 5 E's, you know, which is enthusiasm and energy, and I'd forgotten one of the E's, and I got stuck, and I said, I asked the audience, what do you think the last E is? And I was hoping it would come out of the crowd somewhere, you know. And what I was really doing there is like what we do as speakers is we buy time by asking a question.
Yep.
But you're not really listening to the answer. You're thinking to yourself, what is it? What is it? What is it? So yeah, that was probably one thing. I know it's maybe not super funny, but yeah, I sometimes forget certain things that I've even written about myself, you know.
That is really funny.
Play the crowd well. I love that. Yeah, play the crowd well.
You got to know the tricks of the trade. If you ever forget your lines and you're up in front of a group, ask a question. It will buy you time.
That's actually very good advice. I think I'll remember that one as well, with the 80% rule.
Yeah, no, it's been great. Thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure being on, and thanks for everything.
Well, it was our pleasure. Thank you so much. And maybe we'll bring you back on for another episode in the future.
Anytime.
All right. Well, thank you and have a great night.
You too. Thank you, guys.
See ya.
Bye.
Hey guys, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. If you liked this episode, then please go ahead, subscribe, like, or comment. This helps us grow more than you know, so we can keep making more content like this.
Or you can visit us on sportfuelslife.com and register to become a member for free, so you never miss another podcast episode. Thanks for listening.
Do it, you won't regret it.